I'm standing by the Pinkney Jarrett cabin, which was built around 1860. It was located only 2 miles from Hart Square, donated by John Bumgarner. David Huffman and Coy Reed, both sheriffs of Catawba County, will talk to you about what being a sheriff meant in the 1800s and jails in the 1800s.
I'm Sheriff David Huffman. I've been sheriff in Catawba County for 28 years, the longest serving sheriff since 1842. And 1842 is an important date because that's when Catawba County was first formed. And as a result of that, the sheriff was the first person appointed to county government in Catawba County. And as such, the other appointees came along behind, and then there was an election held. And so Catawba County has been around a long time. When the sheriff was first appointed, they rode horses. They didn't have cars or sirens or this type of thing, and they wore specific type of clothing because they were in all types of weather. And as a result, they pretty well could handle people in the whole county. What I mean by that is they knew them. They knew the folks. It was not like it is today, 185,000 people in Catawba County. It was probably in the neighborhood of 6,000 to 8,000 at the most. And that included some in Lincoln County because Catawba County was formed from Lincoln County. And as a result of the location of the county seat, the jail was built in Newton. And as a result of that, they had a situation where the jail cells and the living quarters was in the same building. And most of the time, the sheriffs over the years have had their family to help them, like their children would help do chores around the jail, bring wood in for the fire, and the wife would do most of the cooking. So it was sort of a self-contained operation over most periods of time until the early part of the 1900s. So the jail was built in Catawba County in Newton, North Carolina, and the folks down there came to the jail for any business or paper to be served that the sheriff may have. A lot of times he didn't even have to go out. He would just send word, I've got a paper on you, civil paper, or in some cases criminal activity, and they would come to the office. Very seldom would he have to go out to the location and actually serve the paper. The cell here in the building, here on Hart Farm, was taken out of the old jail that was built in the 1920s there in Catawba County. So the bars are the actual bars that was in that particular jail. The area of operation even then was a 24-hour operation. The difference is that when somebody was in jail with the sheriff and a deputy maybe or his wife, nobody ever checked on him. Now the state requires you to check on prisoners every 15 minutes to make sure they're properly taken care of. And even back then, very seldom anything was done other than housing the prisoner. The jail now where the jail in the early 1800s would hold no more than 2 or 3 people. The jail now in Catawba County, we not only have prisoners in Catawba County, but also we have them in Burke County. And so we hold prisoners for the U.S. Marshals. So that's another operational procedure that's changed but stayed the same. It's just increased number-wise. The U.S. Marshals also handled the counties in North Carolina until a sheriff was either appointed or elected in the old days. So things have changed tremendously, but they've stayed the same. Back in the early 1800s, the sheriff was, like I said, on a horse or in a wagon, and a buggy, if you will, and he would go out into the community when requested, unless he knew some illegal activity was taking place. And so he would go out and check on it rather than patrol like we do today. We have 24-hour patrol. Back in the early days, that didn't happen. He only went out when he had to, and in some cases had extra jobs because the sheriff's office didn't pay anything back then. They only got paid for papers that they served in the beginning. If they served a paper, they got 50 cents or whatever.
Sheriff, Claude's running drunk again. He's out here bothering people.
I'll be right there.
Hello, I'm Sheriff Coy Reed. I'm the 25th sheriff elected here in Catawba County while Sheriff Huffman's out dealing with our local resident, Claude, I thought I'd go over some things we have here in the Sheriff's Office. I'd like to talk to you first about our ballot box. Our first sheriff was elected in 1843, and this was a ballot box that would have been used back in those times. There's a small opening in the top that you would just drop your campaign name into that box. Next thing I'd like to show you is the weapons of choice. And being the sheriff, we had to use various weapons. We had to use a rifle that was a .45 caliber that would have to reach out long distances. But our favorite was the 12 gauge shotgun, the double barrel shotgun. You know, anything up close, we're not going to miss with that shotgun. Of course, we collect taxes back in those days, and so the money would be locked up in our safe here until it was time to turn it over. Also, I'd like to show you a picture of the last hanging that happened here in Catawba County. It actually happened in Newton in 1896, and that was the last one that was performed in our county. And up here by the desk, first of all, I'd like to point out our hangman noose. You know, back in our days, it was a hanging offense for stealing a horse. And so if the judge gave that punishment out, the sheriff normally didn't carry out the hanging itself. They would have somebody else to do the hanging. But if it was necessary, then the sheriff would perform that duty. Also, the judge may order for punishment a whipping. Whip, something similar to this was used, and there could be as many as 10 lashings to that person, depending on what crime he committed and he was convicted of. You notice the saddlebags out back. You know, we'd use those. The sheriff sometimes has to transport the prisoner to another town, and so if we made a long trip, we'd have to carry our supplies in those saddlebags. Also, on the desk here, we didn't get to do much work here because there was always something going on in town, and with you being the only law enforcement there, you'd have to go deal with it. We kept the keys to the jail here, and I'd like to cover some things that we have in the cell now. Here in our local jail, the accommodations here weren't that great. Everything that they were able to get, they got it in this one cell. You can notice that the bunks are in there, but we also had their water to wash their face and also to drink, and their bathroom is also here. On the floor, the ball and chain, you know, I talked about that we had to transport people. Well, if we took them over to the courtroom, we'd put the ball and chain on them because we didn't want them to run from us. But now when we took them to another town, if we took them in a wagon, then we would put the ball and chain on them. But if we rode them on horseback, we'd have to take that off and just cuff them together. We'd use cuffs similar to what you see here. Now the original cuffs that came over in our country came over on the Mayflower. And these are similar to the ones that came over then. This is very typical of the way the accommodations were back in the 1800s. The sheriff lived upstairs, and upstairs the accommodations there is not much better than what you've seen down here in our jail. I have a bed up there, a table, and that's pretty much it. I invite you to come out in the fall, at the Fall Festival, and see what we have here. Look at all the things that were dated back into the 1800s, and check us out. We'll see you then.
Oh, listen here. How old are you? Would you like to go out with me tonight, please? You got a boy. Would you like to go out with me tonight? I got the jug. All you have to do is just say so. I can get up, pick me
Oh,
up.
what are you doing down here?
No.
Come on. Yep, you aggravating people and getting complaints on you.
Oh.
You got to go. Come on.
No,
Come on. You know
not
how this is.
again.
Yeah.
I just spend
Let's
too
go.
much time in there.
Yeah, we're going to go up here. Come on.
Check in. It is in the mail. You ought to got it, and you ain't
No.
supposed to take me in
You
again.
can't mess with these kids and these people coming up through
Oh
here.
no!
It's like every
Don't
Saturday night.
take me
Yeah,
to
man.
jail. Please don't. I don't want to go. Help me, would you help me? Please help me.
No, you need to go dry out.
No, I'm dry. I haven't wet my pants yet. Oh, God.
All right, let's go.
No,
Yeah,
I don't
you know,
want to go.
Every time you go, every weekend you have to go through this.
Oh,
Be careful getting up here now. Come on. Off now.
I'm not
Step up
bothering
here.
nobody.
Well, you know, we gotta do this every weekend, it seems like.
Oh,
Come on, get in here.
oh, when did I get out?
We don't know, we have to make fun of you. Wait a minute now, you come over here and lay down. Come over here and lay down, sleep it off a while. All right. Okay. All right,
I don't
man.
like this.
No?
Now I've got places to go.
You have to put your name down in the book over here, Claude. It ought to be in here permanently. In the beginning, when Doc began to put this place together, we wanted to have heritage from every area and every walk of life. And of course, we wanted the jail to represent what actually happened in Catawba County. And we were looking for some bars, whether or not to build them or have them made. And at that point in time, we were building a new justice center in Catawba County. And they were going to sell the old jail and tear out the cells from upstairs. And so we went before the county commissioners, talked to the folks that was buying putting a bid on the building, and with the help of Lou Waddell and Bob Mullinax and some of the other folks, the mayor over there in Newton, we got the bars and were able to bring them over and put them in so that everything here would be authentic.